Welcome to our Culture City Sensory Inclusive training. My name is Rachel Barcelona and I will be your host today. As someone with a sensory need and an invisible disability, I want to start out by saying thank you. We at Culture City are thrilled to have your organization become part of our family. By partnering with us to become sensory inclusive, you're giving many individuals the opportunity to come to your location for the very first time. These individuals and their families often don't have the ability to participate in everyday community outings due to their sensory needs. We're thankful for the opportunity to train your organizations and provide tools to create an accepting environment and an inclusive atmosphere. Before we begin, we want to share a little bit on who we are. We're Culture City, a nonprofit organization that's focused on creating a community of inclusion and acceptance for those with sensory needs and invisible disabilities. We make the nevers possible for these individuals by helping the community at large understand their sensory needs and thus helping them feel accepted and included regardless of their challenges. You can find out more about us and what we do on our website, culturecity.org. Our goal today is to share with you our expertise by giving you tools that will hopefully make your job easier and also make your location sensory inclusive. Making your location sensory inclusive creates an environment where, with staff education and minor environmental modifications, each location is able to provide accessibility as well as an accepting and inclusive experience for all individuals, regardless of their sensory needs. Now that we have explained what being sensory inclusive is, let's talk about what sensory needs are. We will begin by talking about disability. Did you know that 1 in 4 individuals in the USA have a disability? This is one of the fastest growing demographics in the world today. Out of this group, the majority of them have invisible disabilities, meaning that their challenges are not often visible to the naked eye. This could be those with traumatic brain injury, autism, dementia, ADHD, ADD, hearing impairment, visual impairment, cerebral palsy, spina bifida, anxiety, depression, Parkinson's, PTSD, or Down syndrome. The vast majority of these individuals with invisible disabilities have sensory needs. In fact, the United States Census Bureau, in a recent study, identified that over 56.7 million people in the USA today have a sensory need. This equates to 1 in 6 individuals living in the USA today. Sensory needs are a common medical condition in which the brain has trouble receiving and responding to information that comes in through the senses. Because of this, those with sensory needs can be oversensitive to various stimuli in their environment. Common sounds, lights, crowds, and even certain smells might not only be overwhelming, but physically painful. This can make routine social interactions extremely challenging. As stated earlier, the greatest difficulty with sensory conditions is that they're often invisible and may not be apparent at first glance. So what do? How do we create the best interaction possible in the face of a visit to your location? In order to do that, we need to first understand what is happening inside a person who has a sensory need. All of us have senses. Most of us know about the basic 5: sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. But there are actually 8 senses in our sensory nervous system that help us navigate the world around us. The 3 additional senses, which we will go into a little further, are body awareness, or proprioception, body movements, or vestibular system, and interoception. Body awareness, or proprioception. This is the feedback that we receive through our joints, muscles, and connective tissue that tells us about what our body's doing. For example, I can close my eyes and take my hand and touch my nose without seeing my hand or my nose. That's proprioception. Difficulty in interpreting this information can affect an individual's ability to get dressed or knowing how much pressure to apply when performing tasks. Body movements, or vestibular system. This system works in correlation with our visual and auditory processing in relation to balance, attention, eye control, and coordination. This allows us to walk down the street and put one foot in front of the other without having to really look where our feet are, and do so without tripping and falling. Difficulty interpreting this information can manifest as an individual who appears clumsy or likes excessive swinging or jumping activities. Interoception is being aware of basic internal primary functions such as hunger, toileting, and breathing. These individuals may not be aware of when they're hungry, thirsty, or need to use the bathroom, and may not be able to perceive certain feelings or emotions in response to their body's internal feedback. Our brain's job is to filter this information so that we can make sense of it. Here are some broad examples of your brain doing its job. You visit a paper mill for the first time. It stinks like sulfur initially, but then your brain gets used to it and eventually you don't notice. The brain has filtered out what it doesn't need to take action on. You enter a room. You're able to visually scan and locate a seat. You sat down on a chair or a couch that you subconsciously chose and did not think about the movements your body was making to sit down in that chair. You were able to filter out external stimulus such as bright lights. Maybe you're surrounded by a crowd of people. Maybe there are outside noises, and if you're someone without sensory sensitivities, then you're able to filter out all these external stimuli and focus on this presentation. What happens if your filter doesn't work correctly? What if you're unable to regulate everything that's coming in and they're hitting you all at once? You can't filter the noise, so you can see, hear, or feel what you want to or need to. We're now going to show you a video what that might be like.
Two, three, four, five, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Take my hand.
As you can see from the video, common sounds, lights, crowds, and even certain smells might be overwhelming and even be physically painful. Sensory needs can affect anyone, from the very young to the elderly. And it's important to note that sensory needs can change with an individual or develop later in life. In the video, at the end, what we see from the outside is an individual who is seemingly having a come apart moment or a meltdown. What we don't see are the events leading up to it, and that this individual is having the come apart because he's over-responsive to his sensory stimuli. When individuals are over-responsive, they have a big response to the incoming stimuli. For instance, lights are too bright or noises are too loud. They might close their eyes or ears, or they might have a flight or fight response in which escaping becomes their primary goal. These behaviors are not meant to be disrespectful to you, but rather their attempt to regulate themselves. Being over-responsive to sensory stimuli is not the only reaction for someone with sensory needs. There are individuals who can be under-responsive to sensory stimuli. For this population, it's common to have a small response to the incoming stimuli. For instance, they may not perceive pain even though they're hurt. They might appear withdrawn or uninterested in the task. For some individuals, it can be a safety mechanism through detachment during periods or being overwhelmed. When an individual is unaware of certain senses, this can cause dangerous situations resulting in injuries and may also make it difficult for you to obtain an accurate assessment of said situation. To summarize what we just learned, sensory needs or sensitivity is a common condition when the brain has a difficulty filtering or processing information that is received by the senses. Sensory needs are often invisible. Sensory needs can result from being over-responsive or under-responsive to external stimuli. They can cause behaviors that sometimes go in contradiction to the stressful situations that they are in. Now that you have an understanding of sensory processing, sensory needs, and sensory inclusion, we want to talk to you about utilizing the 4 E's: education, environmental modifications, effective communication, and engaging and preparing the guest. All of this will help make your location sensory inclusive. Education. By completing this training course, we hope to increase your knowledge of sensory processing. We don't expect you to identify or remember every term we're giving you. For example, we would be surprised to hear you explaining exactly what proprioceptive input is to a guest. However, by understanding sensory processing needs, you will likely change the way you will approach your guest interactions in the future. Environmental modifications. Each location will have entrance decals to show its partnership with Culture City. This universal sensory accessibility symbol helps our families know what resources to expect and provides them with a sense of comfort in coming into your location throughout the facility. You will also notice new signage. Culture City has worked with your organization to designate quiet areas and headphone zones. Quiet areas are places that tend to be naturally more quiet during big events. Headphone zone signage lets an individual or family know that the area they are in is typically loud and headphone use is recommended. This can help decrease sensory overload due to auditory overstimulation. Our sensory bags are equipped with items recommended by a team of physicians, occupational therapists, speech and language pathologists, and behavior therapists. Inside each bag, you will find a visual cue card, noise-canceling headphones, and tactile devices, also known as fidget tools. The visual cue card provides visual reminders of wants or needs that may help replace verbal directions or prompts, even if an individual is verbal. In stressful situations, they can shut down. Think of a time when you were really upset with someone. Remember how hard it was to get words out in that situation? This happens a lot to people with sensory needs. This is how the visual cue card helps. Next in the bag, you will find noise-canceling headphones. These headphones don't cancel out all sounds, but filter out loud noises. When wearing the headphones, unexpected noises are not as upsetting for individuals with auditory sensitivities. In addition, they also provide a pressure sensation to the head that can help with calming. The tactile devices are created for the specific purpose of helping those with sensory needs concentrate so they can block out external stimuli and focus on the task at hand. Additionally, tactile devices can improve their ability to increase awareness and reduce fidgeting that individuals with sensory needs often experience during sensory overload situations. They also relieve stress and provide an easy, affordable option to keep the mind stimulated and occupied. The KC VIP lanyard helps your guests experience team recognize that someone with this lanyard or someone in their party might have a sensory need. Individuals who show signs of proprioceptive and/or vestibular input may benefit from checking out a weighted lap pad. These are great tools for events that require sitting for extended periods of time. Weighted lap pads provide feedback that can be very comforting and regulating for an individual. If you've ever had an X-ray done, you are probably asked to wear a heavy lead vest or use a lead blanket. Many people find that feeling to be calming, kind of like a deep hug. This feeling is the same as using a weighted lap pad. Some of our sensory partners have worked with us to develop sensory rooms. Sensory rooms provide a safe, calming environment to facilitate self-regulation and relaxation for guests who are feeling overwhelmed or overstimulated during their visit. Many locations utilize our recommended exit and entry procedure. Although quiet areas and sensory rooms may be provided, some individuals will prefer to go outside of the facility to take a break. The goal is for them to re-enter once their sensory processing system has regulated. They can take advantage of this using the KC VIP lanyard. Effective communication. Some individuals will utilize augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC devices like iPads. We do not expect you to know how to use these devices. However, it's important that you take a look at examples so that you can recognize a communication device. AAC can also be seen in low-tech forms such as picture cards, notebooks, or visual schedules. When speaking to an individual with sensory needs, you always want to keep language simple and concrete. Giving multi-step directions can be difficult for many individuals to process. Instead, be direct and provide simple one-step directives. Because some individuals required increased time to process language, you should always give the individual time to respond. Many individuals have difficulty understanding social cues. They may not respond to a handshake, or they may have an inappropriate response to others' emotions. For example, they may laugh at the sign of a family member crying from an injury. Never describe a person by their diagnosis. Always use person-first language. Some examples of appropriate person-first language are a person with dementia, an adult with Down syndrome, a child with sensory needs. Always use the term accessible instead of the word handicapped. The exception is in autism. According to studies by the Autistic Advocacy Network and the Center for Autism Research, in the autism community, many self-advocates and their allies prefer terminology such as autistic, autistic person, or autistic individual because they understand autism as an inherent part of an individual's identity. The same way one refers to Muslims, African Americans, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, Chinese, gifted, athletic, or Jewish. Engaging and preparing. Your organization will have its own personalized social story. A social story is a simple story used to prepare an individual for a new experience. Actual pictures of the location are used to desensitize the individual to the new environment. Social expectations are outlined in a social story to help decrease the anxiety of going to a new place. Social stories and other information about our partnered location can be found on the Culture City app. This gives individuals and families the ability to plan ahead and have easy access to the resources provided. The last thing we're going to talk about is what you should do if you witness a meltdown. We have created a CATCH acronym to help you remember our recommended procedure for meltdowns: consent, approach, tools, crowds away, help. Consent. Always ask the family or caregiver permission to assist with the situation. If the answer is no, give the family privacy they have requested. Approach. Once consent is received, you will approach the individual. Never physically touch an individual experiencing sensory overload. You should always keep a quiet, calm voice and use concrete language. If you scream at an individual or ask repetitive questions such as, "What's wrong?" this can escalate the meltdown. Tools. You want to try and find out how the individual communicates. Are they verbal? Do they use sign language? Do they have a communication device? Offer visual cues to the individual such as the feeling thermometer or a map of the facility. This will give the individual options for regulation, whether it's an item from the sensory bag or a restroom shown on the map. Crowds away. The purpose of this partnership is to make sure all individuals feel welcome and accepted. When situations occur, you should try to redirect crowds to another area. We want the family to have privacy and space during a sensory overload experience. Your main goal is to protect the dignity of the individual and their family or group. Help. To further assist the individual, be sure you know where quiet areas or sensory rooms are located. Utilize the resources we've given you. Talk to the family or individual about sensory bags and where they can check these out. If your facility offers an entry and exit procedure, you can explain that at this time, some families will ask for family restrooms as a calm down area. Offer to show them to the space of their choice. The family's safety and comfort level is always your main priority. Be sure to ask if there's anything else you can assist them with. You always want to make sure you leave a positive impression and that the individual or the family will want to return for another event. Unique situations. What do we do when interacting with individuals who are blind or visually impaired? Some individuals who are legally blind can have some vision, while others have no vision at all. Prior to entering, addressing, or assessing the individual, announce your presence and identify yourself. Speak naturally and directly to the individual and use a calm tone. Request permission before touching the individual and allow the person to use your arm for support if you need them to walk. When assisting someone with a visual impairment, they may choose to walk slightly behind you to gauge your body's reactions to obstacles. Be sure to verbally announce stairs, doorways, narrow passages, ramps, and any other obstacles in the environment. Communicate any written information orally and always orient the individual to the environment. Many individuals with sensory needs or visual disturbances may use a service animal. When interacting with them, please be aware of the following. Service animals are not a pet. Do not touch or feed the animal without the owner's permission. When the animal is wearing a harness, that animal is on duty or working. When assisting and securing the service animal, hold the leash and not the harness. You may need to ask for the leash from the owner if it's not on the animal. Service animals must be on a leash or a harness, and the individual is not required to give you proof or registration. It's important to treat the individual and the service animal as one unit. How about those who are deaf or hard of hearing? Use visual cues and gestures to aid in understanding. Keeping a pad and pencil or a word processor on an electronic device to help in exchange of a written communication can also be beneficial. It's important to ask if the person has an assistive listening device or if they need an interpreter for sign language. Here are some practical suggestions for communicating effectively with someone who is deaf or hard of hearing. Use visual cues to get attention. Always face the person while speaking. Make sure that the area is as well lit as possible. Speak slowly and distinctly. Only one person should speak at a time. Use short sentences and simple words, and keep in mind that family members may lack the vocabulary or impartiality needed to interpret effectively. Decrease background noise during communication. Use gestures and facial expressions to reinforce what you're saying. Always confirm that the individual can read prior to using written communication. Ask about language preference. If using an interpreter, look and speak directly to the deaf or hard of hearing person, not the interpreter. With this, you have reached the end of your training. We want to thank you so much for your participation in the Culture City Sensory Inclusive Training. We thank you again for partnering with us to create a safe environment for all individuals. Always remember that you have the power to change lives. It's through our partnerships that we're able to turn awareness into acceptance and inclusion worldwide. If you do think of any questions, please feel free to email us at support@culturecity.org. Thank you once again for partnering with Culture City.